Welcome to another Kundalini After Dark session. I'm your host, Brent Spirit, and I'm here on Zoom. There's 17 people in the Zoom room today. We got about 10 people tuning in on YouTube. It's going to be a good time. The topic today is Kundalini Shakti and relating with a Divine Mother. So if you're listening to the recording in the archive, you can join us for the next After Dark session. You can visit brentspirit.com/afterdark to register. On Spotify, you can leave a rating for the show. That would mean a lot. If you're listening in on YouTube, you can hit subscribe. That would also mean a lot. I appreciate you all for your support. So Kundalini Shakti and relating with the Divine Mother. So how I first came across this idea of being able to relate with the Divine Mother, or even more generally, be able to relate with this force known as Kundalini Shakti. Well, I was listening to a famous, very well-known, really brilliant spiritual teacher, Adyashanti. He's incredible. He comes from a Zen background. He teaches from a non-dual perspective, very well balanced. And of course, he went through Kundalini awakening, though he doesn't talk about it too much. But very early on in my journey, I was experiencing some Kundalini phenomena, as we know, energy moving through the body, emotional stuff coming up. And so I found a Q&A between a student of Adya and himself. And the student said, that they were having some really intense Kundalini awakening experiences within themselves. And Adyashanti said, try talking to the energy. And I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. That doesn't sound like typical Adyashanti speak. Doesn't sound like typical non-dual speak, or definitely not something that you would come across in Zen Buddhism, which of course Adyashanti has a background in Zen, like I mentioned. But here he was saying, hey, why don't you talk to the energy? So I thought, I never really considered that. Let me try this. So I turned inwards and I, made an attempt to communicate with this force moving through me. And I found that, this sort of felt right to address this energy, to communicate with it, to have a sort of relationship with it. This was the very early stages of this relationship. And so it felt right. It felt as if I was relating with an infinite intelligence that was omniscient. It knew everything, right? But I began to wonder, well, what is this intelligence? Who is this intelligence? Over the next few days, I began to hear sort of intuitively, sort of telepathically, inwardly, I just kept hearing these words, let Shakti have her way with you. Just let her have her way with you. And so this is how I eventually, through synchronicity, through grace, I came across some teaching specifically about this force known as Shakti, Kundalini Shakti. And I came to understand that the Shakti was the divine feminine, was the goddess. And then I said, okay, I see. Kundalini is an intelligent force. It's the goddess waking up within me and the goddess moving through me and transforming me. So that's how I came to understand why we refer to Kundalini as Kundalini Shakti, right? It's the Shakti. So Shakti, of course, is the goddess from the Hindu Vedic traditions, right? Shakti, Sanskrit. So I was hearing this term, let Shakti have her way with you. So I began to relate with her with this feminine goddess force moving through. But of course, before we continue on today, I want to just take a step back and express that we can see this intelligence, this force, this transformative power, this divine intelligence, this presence within us. We can see that it's not exclusively just feminine. It doesn't have to exclusively be Shakti, the Hindu deity, the Hindu goddess, right? It's only conceptualized that way within certain paradigms. It's only conceptualized that way within, what I'm sharing with you here today. But not everybody is going to relate with her in this way. So some may be more inclined to relate with sort of a masculine representation. They may say it's God the Father, or maybe something more general. They say this is just universal intelligence. This is source energy, right? They may say this is Mother Nature, right? This is Gaia. They may even say this is my higher self, right? To me, it's all one thing. It just expresses itself in so many different ways. And we have to use language. We have to use concepts that are categorical, that divide into masculine and feminine, into binaries. We have to use those in order to communicate at times and to better understand these things. But overarchingly, in a broad sense, you can relate with this force in however you like, however feels right for you. For me personally, I know many others as well, the idea of the Divine Mother feels right, it makes sense. But by all means, there are many valid ways of relating with this intelligence. And if my language today doesn't suit you, simply translate the language over into something that does, right? You can be a little flexible, you can adapt a little bit. So for me, the idea of the divine feminine resonates with me because it was very fresh, it was very new, right? The idea of this of God the Father, right? The masculine God, the old man in the sky. My concept of that had been tarnished by my upbringing in Catholicism. So I perceive this masculine God to be vengeful, to be very frightening. And so it was very hard for me to snap out of that conditioning, even after I had, say, moved away from Catholicism, even after I had, understood more broadly about what the divine is. I still had a lot of bias and a lot of past conditioning around, this idea of relating with God the Father in the masculine way. But nobody had ever really told me anything about the divine feminine, right? So I was free to get to know the divine feminine, the divine mother in my own way, right? It was like, if somebody talks bad to you about somebody and then you meet them, you've already got a bit of an idea about that person, right? Because somebody spoke badly about them. It's very difficult to suspend what you heard and get to know that person authentically for yourself. So that was my relationship with God the Father, you could say. But the Divine Mother, nobody had spoken bad about her. Nobody had told me anything about her. So it was very fresh. I got to know her myself. So I began to try to connect with this force, Shakti, the goddess, through communicating with her inwardly, through intentional thoughts, you could say, which is essentially what prayer is. So I was praying to her. And this is when I learned about bhakti yoga. Now, bhakti yoga is the yoga of devotion. It's an emotional path that involves relating with the divine through emotion, through the heart, right? So it's not just an intellectual thing. It's not a philosophical pursuit. It's not something that requires like very disciplined, specific practices, right? This was an emotional relationship from the heart. And the heart doesn't have thoughts. The heart has feelings, right? So this type of communication, these type of prayers that I made to the goddess within me and externally, she's everywhere, right? So these were authentic prayers, right? They were genuine. They were fueled by emotion. Compared to, growing up, my inauthentic prayers to God the Father, which is basically repeating the words that someone else told me. There was no emotion involved. There was more resentment and confusion and, wanting to get it over with so I could, get on with my day or whatever it was. There was no genuine communication happening there, right? So relating with the Divine Mother in this way was very fresh. It was very new. It felt right. It felt authentic. It felt like my heart was finally getting a chance to express. So some say, and I agree with this, that the highest form of yoga is bhakti yoga. It's the yoga of devotion, like I said. So as we know, Kundalini rises from the base of the spine, up the spinal column to the top of the head. But in some paradigms, in some individuals' experiences, the energy doesn't necessarily escape out of the top of the head, but rather it pours down the front and finally rests in the heart. So maybe some have experienced this. This is generally my experience, where the heart is where the final resting place of that energy is. And that's how when we move into the heart, we become heart-centered, right? And so this is, like I said, bhakti is the highest form of yoga. So when the energy enters into the heart, now you're a bhakti yoga. You're not a jnana yogi with intellectual knowledge or knowing the self or knowledge of scriptures and texts. Now you're essentially a madman that's just drunk on love of the divine. You're just a bhakti yogi celebrating dancing just intoxicated, right? In bliss. So this is what Rumi is speaking about when he speaks about in his poetry about being drunk, right? He speaks about the wine and how good the wine is. Now he's intoxicated. He's not talking about literal alcohol. He's talking about being drunk on the love for God, right? Which is the same love of God. This is bhakti. So when we speak about the love that we may have for God and the love that God has for us, is the same love, right? It's the same love. So it's that relationship back and forth. So we can move into these devotional, these rapturous states in celebration, in awe, in wonder, gratitude, love, and we can surrender to the Divine Mother in our hearts. So we can express through these types of prayers I'm speaking about how much we love her, how much we trust her. We can give ourselves up to her. Like I said, we can let her have her way with us. So in doing so, she will relate with us, showing us directly about how we are supported and taken care of by her. So she may move our bodies with kriyas. She may put us into a deep meditative state. She may speak to us directly. She may give us a vision. She may inspire us with an idea, with creativity. She may heal us, right? Spontaneously healing us emotionally, physically, psychologically, whatever it is. She may draw us through a particular situation through synchronicity, through the flow, right? She makes kind of, in a sense, hold our hand and move us towards a certain situation, a place, right? Just at the perfect moment. So here's an example of a synchronicity that demonstrates my relationship with Shakti. So as you might know, my hobby, my guilty pleasure is indulging in spiritual materialism by collecting used spiritual books from the thrift store. So I never know what I'll find. It's always a good, fun trip. So just yesterday, prior to giving this talk today about relating with Shakti, I came across this book here at a thrift store in the city. So on the shelf, all of the other books were like this, many other books on the shelf, but this one was staring at me right in the face, just like this, Shakti. So I'll read a little bit from the back here. By you, this universe is born. By you, this world is created. By you, it is protected, O Devi, and you always consume it at the end. And that's verse 75, chapter 1 of Devi Mahatmya. And the author goes on to add here, she is the benign creator, the fierce protector, and the invincible destroyer. She is the source of all life, and all life culminates in her. She is the embodiment of every emotion, from compassion and ferocity to beauty and wisdom. She is the ultimate Shakti, the primordial cosmic energy. So this is Shakti, an exploration of the divine feminine by Nilima Shitgopikar. Nice little book. Tons of color, pictures. Beautiful. And so I got this for a really good price, considering how big it is, hardcover book. It was placed right in my lap, right? I would say by the Divine Mother Shakti herself, just in time for me to give this talk here today. So if you're interested in that book, it doesn't speak about Kundalini process per se. It speaks more about the different symbols and the different goddesses and deities and the way that it shows up throughout some of the religions of the East, yoga, Buddhism, etc. So you can check that out if you're interested. So just finding this book alone is an example of how I relate with the Divine Mother, right? Comes at the perfect time. And it's, of course, it's perfect, right? It's absolutely perfect. It doesn't get any more perfect than that, right? So in your own way, right? If you open up yourself to having a relationship with the Divine Mother within you, she will show up right? To guide you, to support you, to carry you wherever you need to go through anything, through anything at all, any difficult purging, transformation, healing, whatever it is, any challenges you may have in your life with work, with health, with relationships, whatever it may be, right? If you have a close relationship with her, you can know that she has your back, right? So for those who don't really relate with Eastern systems, I completely understand. Another way of thinking of the goddess of Shakti is as a mother bear, right? And recognize that you yourself are her cub. So she's cuddly and she's warm and she will teach you, she will guide you. She will also protect you from anything and everything. But in order to do that, right, in order to be a protector of you, she has to have the potential to be fierce, to be ferocious, right? And she certainly does, right? But that fierceness, that ferociousness, that aggression, it's never actually directed toward you, right? You're her cub. It's only towards things that may harm you, right? So when people fear Kundalini and they fear this process and they're terrified of all that's coming up, right? It's because they don't realize that they are her cub, right? They don't realize. They see this fierceness, they see her growling, right? And they think, oh, these growls, they must be directed towards me, right? But it's definitely not, right? The growling is directed towards the parts of us that no longer serve us, right? And so this is how that mother bear energy is coming to protect us from the things that, maybe are in our shadow that need to be shredded up, clawed away, and destroyed, right? That's how she's protecting us. So the yogis, they show the goddess and her fierce side through her manifestation as Kali, right? They show her generous side through her manifestation as Lakshmi, her wise, intelligent side through Saraswati, right? But the mother bear as well, she has all of these qualities in that one archetype too, right? So you can relate with her in this way, which means, of course, you have to relate with yourself as her cub, right? So here's some ideas for how to further develop a relationship with Shakti. So we can pray in an authentic way, which means we communicate with her and we keep it real, right? We keep it real. We don't have to just parrot like prayers that somebody else told us to say these things, right? We communicate with emotion in the same way that you may communicate with your actual mother or father or your friend, for example. There's some emotion involved there. And we listen. Once we're done communicating our part, we listen, but we listen without attachment to any particular outcome, right? We don't listen in the hopes that we're going to hear something back and desperately wait and then perhaps get upset if we don't get exactly what we wanted to hear or in the way that we needed to hear it, right? Or at the right moment that we needed to hear it. We communicate and we have such deep trust and faith that we know she's listening, she'll get the message, and she'll respond in the best way that we need at the perfect time, right? So just praying without attachment, free from any outcome, totally in the moment, just enjoying the emotion itself that is fueling the communication without attachment to receiving anything in particular, right? So your prayers can certainly be some, ancient mantras and whatnot. Those are powerful too. But, they don't always have to be. You can communicate with her openly, right? It can be messy. You can cry, you can express frustration, you can express confusion, you can even get angry, right? If you feel angry towards her, you can even express anger towards her, right? You're a little cub, she's the big mother bear. You can get angry at her, right? She's very understanding. You can't actually harm her, right? She's very tolerant, very patient, very understanding, very compassionate, right? So she will hear all of it. She'll hear all of your cries, and she will, I've heard her describe that she will eat it. Kali will eat all of this. She'll just consume all of this for you. She'll digest it for you, process it for you, right? So she's a safe person to go to cry, to vent, right? Let it all out, right? This is how she will respond to you in a motherly way. She's not vindictive, right? She's not angry. You are her bear cub. You are her child. So here's a couple examples of my communications with the goddess. So the other day I was having a really hard time. I wasn't sure if I was moving in the right direction within a particular area in my life. I felt as if perhaps I was going my own way, my ego's way, and not the way that Shakti wanted me to go. Right? I felt almost like I couldn't hear her. I couldn't get a clear lead on the direction that I should go. And I was having some doubts. I thought maybe I'm going my own way, right? Maybe I've got my hand too much on the steering wheel here. I was very unsure. I was feeling very confused. So at night before bed, I expressed this, right? I said, Ma, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I need your help. And just emotion, right? Just that was my prayer, just very emotionally driven, right? The energy behind it, the intention behind it. So I didn't hear anything back in that next moment. It was quiet. There was nothing, right? But there's no attachment. Like I said, there's no attachment to hear anything. I know that she's heard my prayer and she'll respond in the best way for me, which I don't know what the best way is. Maybe I think the best way is an immediate response, but clearly she knows better than I do. And so that was it. Anyway, I fall asleep and I was awoken suddenly that same night. I was woken and I heard a very soothing feminine voice and I felt this presence with me. And I hear, you are always in my lap. Wherever you go, always in my lap. So this was an answer to my prayer, of course. She reassured me that, I couldn't go my own way. I couldn't go my ego's way without her, right? There's only one place that I can ever be, and that's in her lap, right? It's only one path for me, which is her path. Wherever she goes, that's where I go. I sit in her lap, right? So I felt a great relief in hearing this. So that's one example of how I communicate with the goddess. So now let me flip the script on you, make it a little interesting tonight. See if you can stay with me here. So a friend of mine, Lila Sterling, she's got a beautiful relationship with Shakti. And I've got a great conversation with her on my channel. You could check it out if you haven't, Lila Sterling. So she shared a really interesting take on how to relate with the divine. So some might say that this is blasphemy, perhaps, but I really love it. So she says that the goddess is her devotee. So rather than saying that she's a devotee to the goddess, she says the goddess is my devotee, here at my service, ready to help and support me. She's devoted to me. So with that paradigm, you can see that the goddess, Shakti, the mother bear, whatever it is, she's completely devoted to each of us, right? Each of our well-being, each of our growth. She loves us all. And if we allow her to be our devotee, well, then of course we can experience her devotion. So though this may sound like some sort of arrogant approach, some sort of arrogant take, right? I think it invokes a sense of worthiness and trust, right? A mother bear is devoted to her cubs in the same way. And the cubs, they must allow and accept her devotion in order to be kept safe, right? So we too must accept the goddess's devotion to us. So sometimes we may feel, I'm not worthy. Who am I, right, for God to come and do anything beneficial for me? Who am I, right? And with that attitude, it's kind of like a little bear cub saying, who am I to think that this mother bear is going to protect me? I've got to go out on my own. I've got to go out and fend for myself, right? That's not really the best attitude for a bear cub, right? So if we allow her to be devoted to us, it can be a very, very powerful paradigm. You can move through a lot of unworthiness very quickly. So I thought that was fresh and new. I hadn't heard anybody express it in that way, in the way that Lila did, but that really spoke to me. So another time, I prayed to the goddess. Just as I was describing earlier, I prayed to her with some communication, asking her for support or something like that. And I heard back very clearly, who do you keep talking to? I am you. And then I was stunned. And in that moment, it dawned on me. All of this time, I was operating with a level of separation in my consciousness, right? I had some belief that I was here and the goddess was either somewhere inside me, separate from me, or somewhere out there, separate from me, right? And so I was having a conversation with her in this way. So with this response, I realized the whole time she has been me, right? And I've been her, and we are one. And there is only the goddess here in existence. There is no separation. So this is what it truly means to say, listen to your body or listen to your heart. Right? It's the same thing as Shakti. Shakti is your body. Shakti is your heart. She is you, right? So at this point, I had a choice. Now I could drop the idea of relating with her in a sort of discussion or a dialogue as if there was two of us, right? And I could shift more to a sort of monologue type dynamic where I'm just fully embodied as Shakti, right? And so that relationship existing and relying on separation, it could be dissolved and integrated into oneness, right? So I had this choice. I could do that, or I could continue relating with her as if she was out there somewhere, which is what I opted to do. So for me, that just feels right, right? It's practical, it's easier, it feels more enjoyable, it feels more human, something like that, I think. It's just easier to relate with a personified goddess, right? Because I know when I see depictions of her, I know that she has ears to hear me, right? She has a mouth to speak to me. She's got hands to bless me. She's got a lap for me to sit in, right? So it feels right. But deep down, I do know it's all one, right? It's all me. And the same goes for you. There's only the goddess here. So however you relate with her is valid. It's real. It's powerful. So that's my message for you today about relating with the Divine Mother, Shakti. Of course, this is Kundalini After Dark, so I want to hear from you all, see how you relate with this force. You know, call it the divine, call it God, call it your higher self, your intuition, your Kundalini, your Shakti. How do you relate with it? How does it relate with you? What are those conversations, those experiences look like? We'll take some shares here tonight. If you have some questions, I'm happy to respond, but I open the floor for others to also share as well. We'll see where our conversation goes tonight. And feel free, if we want to take it a little off topic, we can as well, as long as it's related to, of course, spiritual transformation, Kundalini. So much to talk about. I welcome you all. Tom, Tree, welcome. Welcome, Samia, Tiana, welcome. Andy, Ashley, Carissa, Zoe. I think I got everyone. If I didn't, I see you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Got a bunch of people from Australia in the house tonight. Awesome. Oh, Molly says, it's crazy how these after dark topics are always synchronistic with my journey and what I'm going through. Cat adds, same here. Very interesting. Yeah. So how I choose the topics, well, I don't even choose a topic. I just kind of wait, and sometimes it'll come to me in the shower or in meditation or before bed or something like that. Or maybe somebody will ask a question and I say, oh, you know what? I can talk about that. We'll talk about that. And I guess it lines up. Yeah. All right. Let's go over here to Samia.
Hello. How's
Hey, Samia.
everybody? Yeah, I'm just finishing off work, but I had to share tonight because it was something I just never thought of that you really mentioned, and I like the way you related where just the energy is part of us. I'm always thinking that it's higher self or source or just something outside of me, and I talk to it all the time. Talk to my energy, my peeps. And it for me, I don't get some telepathy, but most of it too is body. My body just moves, yes, no, this, that. So I'm learning to relate to things. But I like the embodiment of idea that it is me. I just always thought it's something separate, and it did make me feel inadequate or smaller. Like, and I never measure up. Like, like a baby cub too. This is always the mama cub, but it's part of me, and I like that analogy. It gives me more empowerment. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. My energy has been calmed down more, but up and down. But all of a sudden now I'm like moving to a completely different state. Like the last 3 weeks have been a whirlwind of change and change and walking in the unknown. And I just would like any advice on like if anybody had gone through this experience and had to move to a different state. And like I'm trying to like say a couple things, stay connected in my practices, but it's even quite hard to even kind of meditate because I'm all over the place. Of course, I'm moving, you know, it's a major change, but it's for the better. And everything is aligning, like a place to stay is aligning up that I would never be able to afford where I'm at in Florida, in South Carolina. You know, my friend's renting me her house and, you know, I don't have to pay the first rent. Like things are just lining up where I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it financially. How I'm gonna do it um, physically, and it's just things are lining up. So I'm just walking through the fear. But my question is, or anybody got any positive advice on moving to a different place and going this? Like any techniques, anything to read, anything, you know, any practices, especially at a time where, you know, I'm a meditator and especially yoga nidra has saved my life. I'm having difficulties with that, you know, calming down anxiety, moving the energy, walking in the unknown, but it's just new energy and being around people and integrating, which I've been doing. I got your little integration uh, workshop. I bought that a while ago and it's very, very good. So that helped me out a lot too. But now it's really putting it to practice where I got to get out this little cave I've been in, you know, just working home and meditating and movement and put it into action and integrating. So any advice on actually moving, integrating, talk about to people, not talking about it to people, you know, any advice? Thanks.
Well, thanks so much, Samia. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, if you've got something to share for Samia, please, you know, type in the chat or you can raise your hand on Zoom and let her know. Moving. It's always intense to move, right? What's coming to me is I can only imagine that once you settle into that new place, maybe you lay down on your bed or you finally lay down for a yoga nidra session or a meditation session and you can finally just sigh, oh, I'm here. I've landed. It'll feel really good. And until that point, if you can't settle in and relax, that's okay. Just make it through. It's a transition, right? It's a transition. You don't have to be super strict or disciplined with the practices at all times, right? Sometimes the practice is just being human. Moving is overwhelming, right? It's overwhelming. You can't escape it. It's okay to be overwhelmed sometimes. It'll make you appreciate landing all that much more. That's what's coming to me to share, but maybe some others have something else to share as well. Thanks so much for opening up, Samia. I appreciate it. All right. Over to Tiana in a second here.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hello. Um, so I just want to share my experience because I've just been feeling well, I had the Kundalini awakening 1 year ago during a spiritual retreat with someone who's enlightened. And it was a very intense experience. And the days in the retreat were, you know, I wasn't sleeping properly and I was having a lot of energetic movements in my body. Like I was feeling a lot of third eye pressure and things in my body. And then after the retreat got over, I just kind of fell into this really deep um, emotional phase where a lot of like my childhood memories were coming out. And it was just a lot of things were just coming up and my brain was all over the place. I was a little bit ungrounded. I had a lot of energy up in my head and I just felt like just overwhelmed. And it's been 1 year now. I'm still not doing the best. I still have just a lot of symptoms, I would say. Like I've got like really strong, vivid dreams every night. And sometimes they're like nightmares. And I feel like a lot of body pain as well. Like I feel a lot of stiffness in my shoulders. I have to take a medicine to sleep. If I don't take one, I can't go to sleep. And like I constantly have songs like prayers, songs like just going on off and on in my head the whole day as well. Um and it's just a lot, and I have like these energetic movements, like if I sit for meditation, or if I'm doing something, if I'm sitting or doing my job or anything, like I'll have all these like energetic movements in my body. It feels like something is moving, like it feels like something is moving, and all these flashbacks, like sometimes they're of my childhood, sometimes they're like just some of my past memories just coming up. So I guess I was just looking for like advice, because I feel very, very overwhelmed. Like I have days where I'm just out of it, like I'm crying a lot, like I can't take a lot of these symptoms. And especially because it's distracting, it's not letting me have that motivation that I used to have before, like in my day-to-day life. Like I'm finding it difficult to even cope up with my job, like cope up with everyday challenges, because I'm just always constantly like feeling this way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tiana, for sharing. Yeah, it sounds like a intense, intense journey. Lots of somewhat unusual phenomena in general, but of course, you're in good company here. I think many, if not all, can relate to some degree to what you shared. So I invite others to share some of the ways that they've, managed some of the things that Tiana shared: spontaneous movements, emotions coming up, uh, past memories, childhood stuff coming up, all coming up to be released, as we know. What's coming to me to share is, see if you can create a regular container that you go into to allow this stuff to unfold without distraction, knowing that it's nothing going wrong here. All the movements, all typical cleansing process, all the memories coming up, it's good. Once they come up and they're released and processed, they no longer influence you in unconscious ways, right? So your relationships take on new growth, new depth. Your work becomes enhanced because all of the stuff from the past, the childhood stuff, no longer influences you. So ultimately, the more that we can cooperate with the process, the better we can, benefit from it, the more easily. So create some space where you go into a sort of, say, a meditative space. Maybe it's just lying in bed, or it's going on a walk, or it's journaling, or it's in therapy, or working with, some a spiritual teacher, whatever it is. But carving out some space to allow all of this to unfold, that makes a big, big difference. Makes a big, big difference. But we'll see what else others have to share. If you've got something to share, you can raise your hand on Zoom. You can type it in the chat, and Tiana, take a look at the chat, and we'll see. Maybe some others will have something for you here. Sasan on YouTube shares here: imagine you're in the eye of the storm and watch the chaos from a distance with a little bit of awe and curiosity. It helps. It'll pass. Incredible insight there from Sasan. Thank you. And I think he's right on there. Right on there. Right. Just watch all the chaos from a distance.
Also, like, do you think doing grounding techniques would help as well, just to kind of reduce that chaos in my mind? Because like I find it so hard to even be in the present moment, like with all this stuff coming up and all these songs and flashbacks, etc. Like it's just really hard to be present. um yeah, so do you think like grounding work, stuff like that would help?
Yeah, definitely. As long as we engage in grounding, not to completely shut this process down, but just to bring some balance and some stability to allow this process to unfold, right? So some people think grounding means I need to shut all of this down and go back to how I was prior to, say, in your case, attending that event with the guide, the spiritual guide. It's too late for that. So we ground just to have somewhere to land and to allow this process to unfold naturally. Yeah, it's basic things too, nothing super intense, just walking in nature, hugging a tree, eating well. These things can make a big, big difference. Big, big difference. Some gentle exercise. As long as we don't think that we can get away with creating space. If you ask me, I don't think you can get away with creating some space to do this work. I think you have to just take some time and just sit with what comes up every day, even if it's just 10, 20 minutes, just do that.
Yeah, I'm like really trying to kind of accept everything, but it's like some days I just feel like so much anger as well. Like I feel like I wish I never did the retreat. Like I have all these thoughts like, I wish this didn't happen with me. Like I wish I never went through this awakening process because it's been so difficult for me. Um yeah. So sometimes like those thoughts are hard to combat because I just suddenly feel like um really negative about everything that's going on.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. You're not alone. Many people experience an awakening without really being informed, whether it's through psychedelics or through some sort of Shaktipat event or whatever it is. And, they get a little bit more than they may have asked for. So you're not alone there. And it's okay. Let the anger come up. Let that come up as well. That anger is not specific to just that one situation. That same anger applies throughout our whole lives. Every time we were betrayed or somebody lied to us or misled us, or every time we were forced into a difficult situation, it's the same anger coming up. So now we can work with it consciously, using the context of, the retreat and whatnot, to help us. But we're uprooting all the anger here, right? So if you can look at it like that, and in time, whenever you're ready, there may be some appreciation for, the way your journey unfolded. But for now, I wish you all the best moving forward. We've got some insight here from Vijay on YouTube, saying that, if you play the particular songs that are coming to you while you're having the kriyas, the energy can move more smoothly to express itself. So that's an idea you can consider. Art, Yoga, Enlightenment on YouTube shares your tapping also helps. I'm sure there's some more going on in the Zoom chat as well, so you can have a look there. Tiana, thank you so much. We'll go over here
Thank you
to
so
Tom.
much.
Oh, you're very welcome. We'll go over here to Tom.
Hi, Jana. Sorry to hear about that. How long ago did that begin for you? When was the retreat? And
Are you talking to me?
yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually attended the retreat last year in April. And I've actually been I was following that spiritual teacher for about 3 years. And I was like his student for a while. And then I joined the retreat. And then that's when the awakening happened.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's been a year now.
And what is that spiritual teacher? Have you contacted him again to ask for any help, or has that happened?
So the actual problem is, I did contact him a couple of times, but the thing is, he's not been very supportive.
Mm.
I did ask him for some advice. I was, explaining what was going on with me, my symptoms, like the vibrations, the energetic movements, flashbacks, etc. And he just told me like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I have never like, heard of this. And then he's told me like to go to the doctor and stuff like that. So I really didn't get that support from him. So I had to stop attending his sessions. And
Yeah.
the thing was, I didn't really know many spiritual people back then. So I really was in that phase where I just didn't know what was going on with me. So for a long time, I didn't know what was going on.
So just wondering if you're willing to give us a name, who that was, so we can avoid him sometime. I don't know if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah, sure. Yeah, his name is Vishrant. He's an Australian spiritual teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
I've received Shaktipat from a guru 20 years ago, actually, yeah, in the coming month, May, and had a great time for 17 years until an occurrence of anxiety. What I found at that point was that I needed to actually take medication, and which was okay, because, the same Shakti that's given me is incredibly horrible anxiety is also the structure of the pills. So it's all one thing. So it's okay. This isn't, 19th century rural India where you just sit with it, and you have to get sort of get it and get hold of it first and understand a deeper understanding before you can do that. I think, in my case anyway, because I couldn't sit with it. I couldn't do. It just freaked me out too much. So if they offer, I don't know, I find medication very helpful in that way. And the other thing is, you know, you're lucky, I think, in terms of finding this group, because everyone here has experienced those things and has a lot of stuff. What I found helpful was to not meditate anymore for a while. And I found then that the Shakti was giving me kriyas in my sleep. So, because I was feeling terrible anxiety for 20 hours a day, and then horrible anxiety, and then sleeping for 4, more or less, and then hitting it again. Well, with the medication, I would sleep 9 or 10 hours and have extreme kriyas while I was sleeping, and but not feel the anxiety with it. So that was a real plus. She was very, also I talk with and listen to the goddess like I would talk to a human being inside me and ask for a gentle experience. It's, you know, tell it's too much, I can't handle it. And that's something that's really worked. The other one is diet. And even, although I don't promote alcohol, a beer, something like that, something very mild, and if you drink alcohol. If you don't, that's fine too. You can, you know, use another method, just eat more heavy food like meat. And let's see, I was told by, maybe you've heard of him, Dr. Edwards,
Lawrence Edwards.
Thank you very much. I forgot, amazing, I forgot that name. Thought with him for a year. I forgot. It's fun. To just, something that Brent told me as well in a private meeting with him, was to just breathe, just sit with it, whatever you're feeling. In Dr. Edwards said, like, take 6 months, and instead of meditation, stuff like that, just breathe and watch what happens. Very difficult to do for me. That's why the medications help. But since then, sitting with it and breathing has had some calming effects. And that's but the best thing is a relationship with the goddess. Have you done that? Have you tried that, talking with her, speaking to her like a human being or like a goddess?
Actually, like, I didn't really know that I can actually talk to the power directly until today's session. Like when Brent mentioned that maybe I can speak to her, the Shakti, directly. I had no idea. So I have shown like anger, like I've shown like frustration a lot of times, like, you know, with whatever's going on, because it's just so overwhelming for me. But I guess maybe like I can try to just have that direct conversation with her to see if, you know, she can help me just take it slow a bit, because I think it's a lot for me at the moment. Like it's just a lot of things. And if it can just slow down a bit, like the process can slow down, then maybe I'm able to handle it better.
A suggestion, tonight, as you go to bed, lie in your bed and let yourself drift and just think of the goddess. Keep your focus on her, on you mentally. And what I have found in my life, that she will appear to you, and as you're doing that, ask. This is not a awake state you're going to be in. It's going to be in a deep theta state, and a brainwave state you're going to reach just before you fall asleep. At that point, you will most likely make contact with that one that we're talking about, the goddess. And I've done it myself. It's not dangerous. It's a state you get into when just before you fall asleep. So you do it every day. But this way you'll be wakeful. One of the ways to do it is to lie down and keep your hand elevated above your chest. So if you do fall asleep, it'll drop and you'll feel it and you'll come back to wakefulness. In that state, you know, before you do that, get a thought, formulate your thoughts to what you want to ask for, and And I bet any money, I would, well, not any money, I haven't got any money, but I'm rich. You can, you'll most likely make contact with that one that needs to help you, that will help you. So try that. It's just it's a thing that has been used, and so just to try it again. Just a story for you. There was a man who worshipped one of the gods, Vishnu or someone, and he really, nothing ever happened. He always worshipped and nothing much happened. So finally he got angry and began abusing the statue which represented Vishnu to him, and then God appeared. And he says, well, and Manas was embarrassed and said, and ashamed, and said, well, all these years, and you never appeared to me. And Vishnu replied, that's because you never treated me like I'm real. So do that with the goddess. Don't abuse her, but make contact and talk and ask. And I think it'll help. I hope so. Anyway, enough from me.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
Tiana, thank you for both. What an incredible dialogue and exchange. That's a great story that you wrapped up there with Tom. Yeah, we treat the goddess as if she's real, and we relate with her as if she's real. She shows up. I'm looking here in the chat. Chris D shares here, the feminine energy is a frequency that manifests many ways, but it's all one energy on a spectrum, and we embody integrated these in our own character. It can feel direct, strong, or soft, or nurturing. It's intelligent. It knows what we need. But yes, there's some relevance to calling it masculine and feminine. Right, right. Some others are relating here with some of the religious conditioning and Catholicism. Yeah, many of us forced into a relationship with the divine in unfavorable ways, to put it mildly. Phoebe sharing a great chant and affirmation, a reminder, I am love, peace, joy, and harmony. I say it over and over again until I'm centered. Brilliant. Molly adds here, I'm not huge into affirmations, but I also say I am love all the time. Awesome. My thing was I love you. And I would say that to any thought, emotion, feeling, sensation in my body, memory, anything, everything. Demons came. I loved them too. They didn't know what to do with it. They ran away. Like, they never felt love before. They're like, well, we never experienced this before. So they just left. Right? They're used to people becoming afraid. You give them love, they melt, they dissolve. That's the secret, the paradox. Lean into them. Don't run away. Naima is sharing here that she's watching the chaos from a distance. Brilliant. Sasan adds here, ironically, when stability comes after an intense Kundalini phase, you long for the chaos again. Yeah, sometimes it can get very quiet, almost too quiet in a sense. And you wonder, there was a period where so much was going on, all sorts of emotions and thoughts and mystical stuff and energetic stuff and synchronicity and miracles and all this kind of stuff. And then it just gets very quiet. You can wonder what happened. That's another stage in the journey. You've got to practice non-attachment to the phenomena and not use that as a measuring stick for how advanced or evolved you may be. Sometimes powers come and go. Ecstasy comes and goes. But these aren't necessarily indicators of how advanced we are on our journeys. Red Pill Queen shares here, the first year is the most intense for me. Many kriyas, hard to drive a car. Yes, grounding on the grass / tree. I had to quit Qigong. It was too much. I had many completely dormant years over the past 22 years. Nothing happened while I had a baby until the 7th year. Then I had another rising. Yes, for some, the timeline of this is spread out over many, many years. Always experiencing the rage of Kali Ma. Okay. See if someone else has anything to share here. We've got Tree Wiseblood with us today. Thanks for stopping by, Tree. I've got an interview with Tree on my channel, my podcast. She's brilliant. Tree Wiseblood. You're out in Australia. Tree's got a healing center, the Meher Farm. Lots of great support. Molly shares here, it's crazy. People just live life normal and work and do stuff and watch TV, and they aren't crying every day. Yeah. It's interesting to think about how other people live without this. For me, this happened so young that I never really had a quote unquote normal experience of, not being involved in some sort of far out spiritual journey. I have no idea how anybody lives without this, for better or for worse. Right, we'll go over to Chris here.
Yeah, hi, thanks.
Hey.
I was listening to everyone, and I don't have a whole lot to say other than everything that has happened, we can say has happened for a reason. And some of it's hard to really see it that way. And I believe that there is an element of free will, and there's organic things that are happening, and you can say we're on a timeline while we're sharing a timeline, and there's a finite trajectory that we can go, and things can change. But things definitely happen for a reason. And I came to that knowing in the beginning of my awakening, within the first probably so many days or a week of being deep in it, which was very energetic for me, and convulsing like every night for almost a couple months. And I would just go into basically, detached from the body, just from the convulsing being so intense, and would get, a flood of information, which is hard to, decipher at the time, all of it. But, and, plenty of your own filter kind of gets in the way sometimes. But the one thing that I know for sure, just from my own direct experience, and also, what was shown to me within that knowing, and, just obviously after a time of being on the awakening, it just becomes more and more obvious that certain things that happen in your life happen for a reason. Like I had an out of body experience. I've seen what I believe to be spirits. I've had what seemed to be poltergeist activity, a number of other like otherworldly things that happened before my awakening, let alone after it. And I was shown that, essentially, not shown, but instant intuition, that it all was there for a reason, for me to wake up, for me to question things deeper, and then also to have these experiences so that I'm able to see the awakening and the information that I'm looking at or I'm studying, and being able to decipher, you can say, truth from illusion or distortion. And yeah, for me, it was so, obvious because of the way that it all connected, and obviously that knowing that I was given. And I know that not everybody has those, you know, those otherworldly experiences, or, you know, an out of body experience. You know, sometimes you only have, you know, that one-off experience or through psychedelics. And it's really easy to muddy the waters as far as what's real, what's not real, what's me, what's not me. And luckily, I was able to have a certain set of events that, as much as I tried to rationalize them when they happened and, you know, afterwards, um, you know, it just comes down to like surrendering, you know, my experiences for what they were instead of gaslighting myself in the experiences. But yeah, I guess, you know, what I'm trying to say is to see your journey and what might be happening to you, or, you know, the dark shit, as much as it doesn't feel good, as much as it's a disruption to your life, and you feel like you're losing yourself, and, you know, you become unrecognizable and all this, um that, you know, it's happening for a reason, and there is another side to this, um and to just really have faith. It really comes down to having faith in the process, surrendering to the process, accepting where you're at, trying not to judge yourself, and you know, isolation on some part, you know, solitude is definitely probably appropriate in the beginning. So I guess that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Amen. Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yeah, thank you for joining us here. Yeah, this is great wisdom. Stepping out of this idea of our ego being in control of everything and understanding that a lot of the things were placed on our path long before we may have even been born, per se, for a reason, right? And in hindsight, it becomes very clear, very clear. Synchronicity reveals that as well, right? Synchronicity is arranged completely out of our control, but for our benefit, right? Things come to us, chance encounters with others, certain experiences. It shows us we don't have that much control. Something else is orchestrating all of this for a good reason. It's not random, not random. Having faith in that. Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. PB shares here that acupuncture is essential as the process is extreme, and she's also clearing acute illness for herself, her lineage, and the collective. Interesting. I've heard very good things about acupuncture, though I've never experienced the treatment myself. In our Facebook group, we have book club right now. We're reading Mary Chutan's Working with Kundalini. She's brilliant. We're meeting next week, Saturday, May 4th, for the book club discussion. We'll meet on Zoom. But in that book, she describes acupuncture and its power. I guess, of course, you'd need to find a practitioner that's skilled. But looks like you're getting some benefits from this. Vijay's got a question here on YouTube. Do you think Shakti understands top, bottom, left, right, front, back? I ask as the energy seems to come from all directions. Yes, of course. So she understands everything. She's in infinite intelligence, right? Infinite intelligence. So stereotypically, we have this idea of Kundalini rises from the root chakra and then up to the sacral chakra and progressively up towards the crown chakra. In my view, that's too much of a 3D time space type paradigm, which fails to recognize that this is spirit, this is consciousness. It's beyond the limitations of time and space, directions, top, bottom, left, right, inside, outside, all of that, right? So it's all here and now, right? So specifically, if you're more interested in some of this type of thing, you can look into the idea out of yoga called the Vayus, Vayus, the Vayus, which are the directions that prana flows, if I'm not mistaken. I may be wrong in a semantic sense there, but essentially there are different Vayus that prana flows. Some vayus are flowing downwards to expel waste. Some flow upwards, like, for example, to draw Kundalini upwards. So you could look into this more. But Shakti understands all of these vayus, all of the directions that they're meant to move, and she knows how to manage them in order to facilitate the process of awakening. So you can look more into that. Kundalini Vidya by Joan Shivar-Pita Harrigan goes quite in depth into some of these ideas if you're more interested. But I take a very lazy approach. Shakti knows all, and I surrender to her. Some may be more interested in the ins and outs. And that's good. But I am somewhat intellectually lazy, you could say. David shares here, been through the churches, experiencing no improvements after years of searching. After pulling myself out of the structure from the mind of man, wisdom and help came. That's great. Yeah. This was what happened to me too. I had to abandon the sort of organized religion that I was raised up in and kind of go my own way. At one point, the analogy came to me. I couldn't properly understand my own religion, you could say, Christianity, Catholicism, because I was too close to it. It was like trying to read a book that was like right in my face. You have to take a step back to see it. So that's what I had to do. I had to take a step back. And then I looked at the sort of teachings of Christ, Christian mysticism, the idea of God the Father, and I could make more sense about it and appreciate it and relate with it a little bit more and see that, God the Father in general, God the divine, is just like the Divine Mother, loving, caring, understanding. But still, I prefer to relate with the Divine Mother. It just feels right for me. I'm so glad everyone can help one another here. Tiana, very grateful. Glad you found this community too. Tracy shares here, I'm curious to know from anyone who gets therapy, counseling from conventional therapists, how they talk about their issues with discussing Kundalini. Yeah, so if you have some experiences with that, please share. It's a very challenging thing. And this idea doesn't just apply to Kundalini per se. Many clients deal with issues that they have to educate their therapist on so the therapist can better support them. So sometimes these are, say, cultural issues. If your therapist comes from a different culture than you may have to educate them a little bit on your culture. I come from this type of family. This is how we do things. These are our norms. These are our values. And then the therapist can say, okay, I see, I understand. And then they can support you a little bit better. Sometimes we have to educate them about our Kundalini awakening process. A lot different than culture, right? Difficult. A truly open-minded therapist should be able to sit with you through anything, even saying that you were, abducted by aliens, which of course is a known phenomena. But these experiences happen where, people get shut down, or maybe the therapist just gets overwhelmed, or maybe something in the therapist gets triggered, right? That they don't want to face, right? It's all different types of things like that. So maybe you've got some ideas to share with Tracy here if you have a conventional therapist. This is why I'm putting together KundaliniAwareness.org. It's a website that you can send your therapist who maybe doesn't know about Kundalini. You can say, hey, look, KundaliniAwareness.org. I've got a list of books and resources and videos. Many of those people that have put those out are psychologists, psychiatrists, physicians, therapists. We're putting together a list of stories. So you can submit your story to the catalog. I've just updated it. I've put about 6 stories up so far. More will be coming as you all submit your stories. I'll be able to publish them. And then, of course, we have a directory that we're working on. I'm going to be putting it together within the next week of licensed mental health professionals with Kundalini awakening experience. So you don't have to have this problem. You can connect with a therapist that has Kundalini awakening experience themselves. So even if you don't connect with the therapist through the directory, you can still send kundaliniawareness.org to your therapist or your friends or your family and say, hey, look, there's something going on here. It's not just hippies and yogis talking about this. This is a valid thing that academia has acknowledged, psychology world has acknowledged. All of these doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists have books about it. You know, take me seriously. That's the aim behind kundaliniawareness.org. You can check it out. We've got peer support there as well, different peer support groups listed that you can check out. But yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging for sure. So let's see if Laura's got something to share here.
Hi, everyone. So I have a couple of things in regards to religion. So growing up, I grew up in a very hyper-religious home. My mother was very hyper-religious, and I often remember questioning a lot of things and, her being upset because I used to question why things would work a certain way. And I remember even in my adolescence, I would say, well, why this or why that? And she used to often call me like incredulous and just kind of abide by what the elders are saying, etc. So, as I grew up as an adult, I still was part of the religion. And little by little, as I had my children, I just didn't feel like I belonged, to, what is it? A religion. Like, I don't know. I just didn't like it. I started deviating from it. And I think, came to a point where I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in anything. And I had such a hard time. A few years ago, my husband and I got a divorce. I was going through a very hard time, difficult moments, and I didn't want to turn to religion. And I started kind of going on YouTube and looking for videos, meditating or trying to, because it's not something I did ever. But I found I think it brought me a little bit more peace. And I started praying just because I was so desperate, like trying to find something, but I didn't want to turn to religion because I didn't want to do that. So I started praying a little bit, meditating. And about a year ago, I came across Kundalini videos. So I got really interested in it. And maybe months into it, I kind of had like a Kundalini experience where I felt, I was a guided meditation. And I felt like I was going through all of my chakras. And when I hit like my heart and throat chakra, I just broke down and I started crying. It was such a good and weird experience. I was crying and crying. I was able to comfort my younger self and everything that happened as a child, all the traumas I had. The next day, it felt so odd, almost like I couldn't believe that happened, and if it makes sense. And from that moment forward up until now, I feel like I don't have any sadness. Not that I want to be sad. It just seems really odd to me that I don't feel that sadness anymore. I used to listen to sad music and just be sad. I used to bawl my eyes out and everything. And now, like, I can't even listen to that kind of music because I'm like, I don't feel it. I don't feel sad. I don't feel anything. I mean, I feel great. I feel amazing about it. And to touch base on what Chris said earlier, I do believe things happen for a reason. So I became a little bit more involved in trying to learn a little bit about Kundalini. I'm still not too familiar with the lingo, but I try my best to kind of read about it a little bit every day. And here in my household, my kids are very supportive, but obviously they're not experiencing it, and I'm not going to push them to do it, but I do talk a little bit about it as well. So we're able to talk about it. But I feel sometimes like I'm alone with it because I don't have, I'm lucky that I found you guys. This community is great. So I like that. And in terms of therapy, I was in therapy up until maybe a few months ago. And I did talk to my therapist about it. and she listened. She was very open-minded. She asked me to explain to her a little bit about it, and how it was, and I explained to her how I felt. And as we had more and more sessions, I felt a lot better. And not that I didn't need therapy anymore, but I feel like everything I went to therapy for was resolved. And I still am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. But I think religion, for some reason, is still playing a part in me because I question a lot of things. I think it was just so embedded in me that when something happens, I kind of hear my mother's voice, like, oh, like, that's not right, or that's not correct, or God wouldn't approve. So I think I still have a hard time removing that or those thoughts from my head. So I don't know sometimes what to do about that.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for sharing. Yeah, I think there's a lot there that we can all relate with. What's coming to me to say to you about that voice in your head that, is like echoing your mom's sort of sentiments. You can look into internal family systems, IFS. It's a therapeutic modality, but there's some great books by the founder of the modality out there as well. I'm currently making my way through his book called No Bad Parts. And essentially, he describes that there are these multiple parts of our mind, and some parts are, wounded, they're afraid, they're scared. Some parts are trying to protect those scared parts and whatnot. And we can connect with those parts and talk to them and soothe them. So maybe there's a part of you that feels afraid that your mom may come and scold you and criticize you and whatnot, and you can talk to that part in particular and say, hey, look, we're safe. We're safe. And often those parts are stuck in the past, and they're essentially like children, and they don't know that you are now an adult, able to make your own decisions, able to lead yourself, take care of yourself, etc. So if you talk to those parts and say, hey, I'm here, I'm old, I'm much older, I'm able to, make my own decisions and lead myself with love and wisdom and keep you safe. And those parts may say, oh, I didn't know. I thought you were 5 years old the whole time. So I was just trying to protect you. Anyway, you can look into IFS. I think it'll speak to you. Internal family systems. If I'm not mistaken, my friends over at When Lightning Strikes, Kate West, has an interview with the founder of Internal Family Systems, Dick Schwartz. And he doesn't go much into Kundalini, but in his book, No Bad Parts, the word does show up at least once so far. And that is always just like a great sign for me. It's a beautiful green flag when I see the word Kundalini show up in a book written by a doctor. So you can check that out. It may help you. But thank you so much, Laura, for sharing. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure others do as well. Okay. I'm seeing here in the chat that Quincy's asking, does anyone know what excessive yawning and the mouth opening on its own means? So this idea of prana. So we were earlier speaking about the vayus, the directions that prana flows, energy flows. So prana is it's transported through the blood, through the breath. It seems to be synonymous with chi, with ki, energy, you could say. When we open our mouth and we yawn, it releases or regulates, I should say, it regulates the pressure in our ears, the air pressure, right? So if you travel on an airplane, the air pressure shifts, you have to yawn to kind of pop your ears and all that kind of stuff. That's essentially similar to prana moving through the system. So I don't know the exact details of your particular situation, but I do know that yawning, excessive jaw opening, maybe your tongue is even extending outwards, just to really open the jaw, to open up the ear, to allow that prana to flow or to release excess buildup of prana as a result of the Kundalini awakening taking place. That can happen. All sorts of practices. Now, these are advanced practices that you could engage in actively, consciously, though I don't recommend it. But there are practices that have to do with blocking your nose, putting your fingers in your ears, rolling your tongue back to block the the throat so that air doesn't escape and that prana can build up to then, proceed in your awakening process. These are practices that advanced yogis may engage in. They may happen to you spontaneously at times as well, but there's no need to sit down and, like I said, plug your nose and stuff. Don't do any of that. It's unnecessary, cause all sorts of problems and stuff. But my point there is that there's a lot going on in the head with all of these different airwaves and moving parts that regulate the flow of prana, and yawning is a part of that regulation, and it happens spontaneously because the body knows what it needs to do. It knows what it needs to do. So that's something to consider. Okay. So we'll go over here to Chris.
Yeah, I almost forgot I had my hand up there.
Hmm.
Someone was asking about talking to a counselor. I have talked to a counselor. I was lucky, I suppose, in the sense that he seemed like he was a kind, nice guy. And he also had somewhat of a spiritual background as far as like, he did meditation and whatnot. So, it wasn't like I went full throttle into talking about, Kundalini awakening and all these things off the rip, but kind of softly like walked into it, and yeah, he seemed pretty open, and I'm kind of just pretty strong energy myself, so I kind of really at a certain point really didn't care, so I just kind of was just saying whatever I was saying, and for me a lot of it was because it's not like there was too many people that I could actually talk to, and even when you talk to others that might be going through a spiritual awakening or something, it's hard to sometimes have the same language, the words meaning the same thing for you, etc. So it's good to just like hear yourself kind of like talk through it, and you're processing out loud and you're making connections, and then explaining it to the other person is also kind of, you're remembering yourself, it's giving you a reminder, it's making things more solidified. So it's definitely beneficial to talk about it. But as far as, who you can talk to, I mean, that's obviously going to be up to you to discern, because you don't want to just start talking about, hearing voices in your head, and, someone thinks that they're doing, the right thing, by possibly having you pink slipped, or, talking to your family, or, something like that, to where, you're having authorities come to your house to take you to the hospital because they think that's, in your best interest. But yeah, if you can find someone that's genuinely just seems like a genuinely nice person, and you just even explain it to them, like even if they have no background, that you've had these experiences and you're still making heads and tails of them yourself, but you would like to talk about them so that you can unpack them here, you know just make sure that you have a safe space, basically, before you come out and start talking about it. Read the room, basically. But yeah, even if they don't understand, if they are willing enough just to listen, just allow them to listen. They don't have to have a ton of feedback, because ultimately it's up to you to discern what is what for yourself.
Right on.
So,
No, thanks, Chris. Yeah, that's good wisdom. Read the room.
also, one more thing, if I may. I also was going to mention that there's a doctor, I forget her whole name, but it's Dr. Green. And if you look up Dr. Green Kundalini, you'll find her.
Is that Bonnie
She's an older
Greenwell?
woman. She's studied like thousands of people who've had Kundalini awakenings.
Yes.
She's had one herself. It was more of a gradual, graceful awakening. but she has, you know, some insight there also, and she has some resources available as well. So
Yeah, that's Dr. Bonnie Greenwell.
yes.
Yeah, she's brilliant. She's passed on now, but has done
Oh
some
wow.
great work for us here in this field as a doctor. Yeah, this is great advice, Chris. Thank you. And Vijay on YouTube shares here something similar. Vijay shares, I wouldn't personally mention the awakening to conventional therapists, rather tiptoe around its effects and speak about your pain, dreams, and feelings. I think that's wise as well, right? We don't have to speak specifically about this energy called Kundalini that awakened. We can say, okay, well, you know, I'm having a lot of anxiety coming up. I'm having a lot of memories from my childhood coming up, right? And the interventions that therapists offer typically are quite effective at addressing the content that comes up, right? The Kundalini awakening may be unusual, but the thoughts, the emotions, that's pretty universal, right? That's a great approach as well. But I think as we progress further in our culture, as this ascension, this awakening takes place on a more broader scale, more and more people are going to become aware of this. They're going to be experiencing it themselves. It's already entered into the zeitgeist, you could say, this word Kundalini. We see it happening. And the books are out there, right? The material is out there. The research is out there. Transpersonal psychology as well has done great work addressing some of these things. Carl Jung acknowledged the Kundalini. So if your therapist says that's a bunch of nonsense or isn't willing to hear you, well, you know, you can suggest they read some Jung because it's there. It's very easy to find. But that's why I'm putting together KundaliniAwareness.org to make it a little easier for everybody. But until then, until you find a therapist or anybody that can really understand you, of course, it's important that we you know, use our discernment, read the room. But it is a tricky thing to navigate for sure, for sure. But that's why I'm happy to be with you all. We can all relate with one another. We're speaking the same language, even though the words may not be the same. We're talking about the same sorts of things here. Yeah, Kat C shares here. Transpersonal psychologists are ideal for these types of topics if you're able to find access to one. Yeah. Okay, we'll go over to Tiana here, and then we're going to begin to wrap it up.
Hi. Yes. So I guess I just wanted to provide my own personal experience with a psychiatrist that I've been working with since, you know, the awakening happened. And I didn't even know it was a Kundalini awakening. So my first bet was to go to a doctor. And when I did tell him my symptoms and what's happening with me, he diagnosed me with trauma, like complex trauma. And I've been working with him for I'd say like 3 months now, and we've been doing EMDR, and we've been doing you know, talking therapy, like we talk about what I've been feeling and things like that. So I think it's been nice for me to just kind of talk to someone and just share how I've been feeling, but I personally I don't think it's been of great help because it's not like the childhood flashbacks that I've been having is not really like PTSD. It's not something, you know, it's not like my memories are all like really terrible where I've been having memories of really bad things happening, because my childhood was actually not bad at all. So yeah, so I think, I mean, obviously we all have some layer of trauma that we have in our body and in our mind. We all have traumatic memories and traumatic events that happen to us throughout our life. And I think with the Kundalini awakening process, it kind of comes out, and it comes out to be processed. So I think it's probably nice for some people to go for therapy and talk about it, but I don't think like conventional psychologists or psychiatrists really understand what exactly this process is doing. They just assume it's, you know, they diagnose you with something, but they don't really know what's actually happening.
Right, right. So This is insightful. Virtually no human being understands this unless they're going through it. And then those that are going through it often don't really understand it themselves, which makes it very difficult to talk about, to seek support, to navigate this. It makes it very difficult. But, you know, like you shared there, it's good to have somebody to talk to process some of the things that are coming up. That's the beauty of this type of work in general. But of course, we have to know the scope of the professionals that we're working with. What is their scope? Are they able to work with difficult emotions, memories, feelings, thoughts, anxiety, depression, trauma? Yeah, they can help us with that. Are they able to help us with, you know, cultivating a relationship with the goddess, with the divine? Perhaps, but maybe not. So we don't approach them so much with help in those areas, right? And this is also up to the therapist to recognize when they're being asked to do something out of their scope and steer you in the direction of something that they can help you with. But it's a tricky thing to navigate. It really is. It's not easy, not easy. And like I said, that's honestly why I'm putting together this website, kundaliniawareness.org. It's already up now. You can check it out. You can submit your story about your Kundalini awakening journey at no matter what point you're at, beginning, middle, totally enlightened. Submit a write-up about your journey. There's some basic criteria that we ask. It's at least 500 words. It's proofread. By submitting your story, we're going to build a catalog of many different accounts so that therapists can look at these, that your family can look at these, your friends can look at these, your partners, they can look at these stories and say, okay, there's something going on here. These people aren't all insane. There's some universal themes. And it's already coming out. If you look at the 6 stories that I've posted so far, the themes are there, right? So people can educate themselves. There's resources there. There's books by doctors, therapists, etc. We've got the directory of licensed mental health professionals with direct Kundalini awakening experience. If you happen to be a licensed professional with Kundalini experience, psychiatrist, psychologist, social worker, psychotherapist, counselor, physician, please submit an application to the directory. If you know somebody, please pass a link along to them. The directory is functional. We can find people to work with, but it also serves as a bit of a validation, right? Look at all these people, credentialed people saying, hey, this happened to me too, right? So that's the idea behind kundaliniawareness.org. Yeah, so Molly's sharing here. She wants it to be anonymous. Yeah, you can write anonymously as well. You can submit an alias, and you don't have to indicate any specific details about you specifically, what I'm saying. You can even falsify some minor details to throw people off the trail if you think somebody might figure out that it's you. Kundaliniawareness.org, check it out. In the future, we're going to have some trainings by professionals for other professionals. So the trainings will also help to educate others, counselors, therapists, etc., so that they can better support you. So that's the long-term vision here. The long-term vision here. We're making a dent in the culture. We're doing it together. I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate all of your company, hanging out with me tonight. Kundalini After Dark. It's been a fantastic time. Hope you got some value out of our meeting today. If you'd like to offer a donation to support me in doing this work, if you feel like I've helped you and you'd like to help me, you can make a donation at brentspirit.com. I really appreciate that. I have a course out. It's 8 hours of video content. It's called Grounded Spiritual Emergence and Integration. It's quite polished. I'm proud of it. I think it'll help you if you're feeling ungrounded, like you got a lot of energy, you don't know what to do with it. It'll help you to move back into the world and live out your spiritual awakening in a meaningful way. You can connect with me one-on-one if you'd like to talk in private. brentspirit.com. Thank you all so much. We'll meet again next week. Same time, same place. See you tomorrow for the Kundalini Q&A meeting. Much love, everyone. Much love.